Some of my greatest mentors that I had were classroom teachers. I could never see myself sitting in an office for the last 50 years on some computer. I couldn't be a salesman, though there's nothing wrong with salesmen. And friends of mine that became insurance salesmen, heck, some of them became millionaires. And they would say, Sean, you ought to sell insurance. You'd be great at it. I said, I don't want to sell insurance. I was bartending. I was coaching. I loved that. I loved teaching. I loved the whole experience. I loved helping young people develop because the people that helped me were all teachers and coaches. I was an extension of them. Doing that for 50 years never to me was a chore. Remember that saying, find something you love and you never work a day in your life? Really, that was me. I can never remember really going into school and saying, I hate going in today. Now, there were some days where I said, I should have went home before 4 o'clock in the morning because I have to teach at 8 o'clock. But I wasn't going to call in sick. I was going to be there for those kids. It doesn't make me a martyr or anything. It was just, again, that accountability factor. I signed on the line that I was going to be there for them. So I was going to be there for them. And I never felt burnt out on it. Yeah, I had times when it hurt. Kids I worked with that got hit by trains, committed suicide, overdoses. Yeah, all those things happen. But then the kids that came from really tough families that became doctors and lawyers and teachers and firemen and cops and kids that named their kids after me, there couldn't be any greater honor.
For someone who has a big dream and knows their gifts and has used them, how do you stay content to not go, ooh, shiny insurance salesman has a shiny car because they make a lot of money?
I think any person is susceptible to what we might call burnout. Even if you stay in the lane, you say, hey, this is what I want to do. This is my passion. Sometimes you got to do other things. And that's why even like professional athletes, they have the off season to recharge. Teachers each 9 months, and then they have time to recharge. Coaches have to do that too. I think it's terrible when we take athletes, especially high school athletes, and we work them year round. That's what they're being told today to do. And I think it's crazy. Take time off, go swimming. But there's somebody else out there. Don't worry about this. People are going to work themselves to death. It doesn't mean they're going to be better. So I think you have to have distractions, healthy distractions. Believe me, there's a lot of unhealthy distractions, and they're okay every now and then. But then you have to have other distractions. Like I don't go to casinos, but I love going to the horse track. We don't have one in Kansas City, but if we did, I wouldn't go all the time, but I would go occasionally. To me, that's a great distraction. I also love to read. I love to cook. If I was standing up and people could see my rotundness, they would know I like to eat. But before you eat, you got to cook. And I'd love to sing. We go to sing-alongs. There's a lot of things that you can do that have nothing to do with your career, nothing to do with your path, your passion, but they do have a lot to do with your mental health and keeping you energized, where you don't have to go to the top of some mountain in Nepal to find the guru. You can do that yourself. And I think they all have to revolve around other people. I think, find the joy in other people. To me, there's nothing like a good sing-along. And you get people singing songs together and all their problems go away for that time. And it's energizing.
Most people in their 20s aren't lost.
They're just early.
That's right. Welcome to After the Bell, conversations for young professionals figuring out what comes next without pretending to have it all figured out. I'm Nick Kaufman-Mamisashvili. Welcome to my office. Sean, hello. How are you?
I'm great. How about yourself? How's that new baby of yours?
He is so close to walking on his own, and we're going to get him a scooter, I think, for Christmas. So when he's closer to a year and a half old.
Well, make sure he gets a helmet and
Yes.
put a hockey outfit on him for the street.
I wanted to introduce everybody to you. You are a member at the church where I used to serve as a pastor. And I got to know you when I was asking for mentors to help our youth program that didn't previously exist. And you said yes to being a confirmation mentor, essentially helping students in eighth grade understand the basics of the Christian faith. And you are Irish Catholic, going to the United Methodist Church, and the students loved you. I've loved you, still love you. And so grateful for that experience. But is there anything else that you want to lift the veil on for people to let them know a little bit more about yourself?
Well, I always say that I kind of see myself having lived in three worlds. I had three different types of lifestyles to pull from to help me in my journey. And that has also helped me with other people on their journeys. And I was a child. I thought I was living in Ireland. I didn't realize I was living in New York City. So I was much older. And I had a second life, and that was being a street kid in Washington Heights. And then the third life I had was moving to the Midwest as a young adult and saying, wow, there's a great big country out there. But I think those three different types of experiences, the old world, the urban world, and the Midwestern world, have really been each in their own way very substantial in my own development on my journey. But equally as important, I think they've helped me as I walk with other people on their journeys. All those experiences, I can draw from.
Yeah, that's beautiful. When did you realize that it was really a gift as opposed to a drag?
I don't want to say gift because I don't think I've ever really saw it as a gift, but I've always seen it as part of me, part of my personality. Probably about 16 or 17 years old, I knew I could walk in two different worlds. I could walk in the world where I'd meet with all my relatives and it'd be so different. And the next half hour, I could be out in the street playing stickball and it'd be so different. And I could walk very well in both worlds. And probably my early 20s, when I was working on a farm, where I always told people I was comic relief more than actual important labor. But being able to socialize and communicate with what many people would consider rednecks. And I got to see them as hardworking people out on the prairie, so to speak, baling hay and castrating cows and doing all kinds of strange things. And thinking to myself, no, it wasn't too many years ago where I was, working in a bodega. So it was, being able to blend those worlds together and I guess successfully navigate the social cues that those worlds each have that are different.
So you grew up in Manhattan, in the city, as we call it, and you also frequent your family back in Ireland. Is that still something you do today? And tell us a little bit more about your experience growing up in New York City.
Okay, so a little shameless plug here. My family owns the oldest independent travel company in the country of Ireland. And so I do work for them. I set up trips like golf trips, spiritual journey trips, group trips, family trips from the United States to Ireland. So I do that as kind of a little side hustle. But that's been later in life. When I was a child, I would visit my grandparents' farms in Ireland. And they lived in the north of Ireland, which was very rural. I remember the first time I went and there was thatched houses and no running water. And, you went to the bathroom out in the barn. And I thought that was really strange, especially since I had been to Broadway plays and Rockefeller Center. I said, people actually still live like this? Those experiences as a kid were fascinating. And I look back on them now and I cherish those times. I wish there was more of them. But I have more family in Ireland than I have in the United States. Growing up in New York City, it's kind of like every block was a living, breathing United Nations. There wasn't just one nationality. We had the world. It was like a cornucopia of smells, and each one better than the next. And, you kind of got to know people as people. And I don't remember any real prejudice in our neighborhood. And if you heard us talk to one another, you might have thought we hated one another from the language that we use. I'm not going to say that on your program, but it wasn't in malice. It was just how we were. But those experiences, especially in the schoolyard, in the park, in the alleyways, those were like petri dishes of how to get along with human beings because we had to figure it out. There wasn't any monitor on the street corner, and we went to the schoolyard to play, and you won and you lost. Nobody got trophies. There was nobody there with oranges to give you after the game. You played and you learned how to get along with people. And I think that's invaluable.
100%. My wife and I were just saying as we were walking the streets yesterday, how much we love hearing 7 different languages, and you could go down a whole block, you don't see a single person who looks the same. And we were saying, it would be one thing if it's once a month or it's like a couple times a year. It's every single day. It is really beautiful as a United Nations, I think, is a way you described it. I was asked by a first generation Chinese American young adult, he said, do they have racism in the Midwest? I said, yeah, just like anywhere else. And he was like, yeah, but here it's different. You can't just assume people are being racist just because they're being rude. It's just probably they might be friends. They just look different. And I thought, that is interesting. That is an interesting perspective. In New York City, it's just a whole new ballgame for a Midwest boy. Tell me a little bit more about your connection to the land and the people of Ireland and how maybe that experience has helped you be more human.
Well, if someone says, "What am I?" I always say, "I'm an Irish American." And I've had people argue with me and say, "Well, no, you should just say America, United States citizen." I said, "No, I'm not putting America down at all. I was born here. I love it here. But I'm also very proud of my heritage, just as if somebody was from Nigeria, they'd be very proud of their heritage. So putting that first doesn't mean anything bad about the United States. I think it's a compliment because I really believe we're the only country that I've ever been to that really has the woven nationalities, religions, even with all our problems. We kind of make it work. Sometimes it doesn't work all that well, but we're always in the process of trying to make it work. If people really understood Irish history and not just St. Patrick's Day, green beer, and leprechauns. It's a people that have been oppressed for 800 years by the British Empire. And so they had to emigrate or starve. And I'm not even just talking about the famine. That was the big thing. But there were other times people had to leave their homeland. So the Irish went all over the world. And because of that, they've always taken on the role of the underdog. And that was like part of my DNA. It was never told to me, but it was just like part of me. So getting along with other people, championing the underdog was just kind of like something I did. It's just part of my DNA.
I think it's also part of the DNA of the United States is that sense of underdog. We love being the underdog, which is so funny because we're the largest and most intense superpower in the entire world, but we still identify with like the underdog story. Like it's when you hear a LeBron James who came from this one parent household raised by a single mom and drugs and violence. And now he's like making billions and giving back a ton of money. And his son is playing with him in the NBA. He's like a shining example as to you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. You can truly pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I wouldn't call myself a German American, but my German heritage is very, very strong. My great grandparents immigrated here from Germany. They actually moved to a place in Nebraska where I got my start in ministry after university. And Irish folks and Germans had a very different experience of specifically immigrating to New York. And one of the things that I've loved doing now that I live here is going out to Liberty Island. Every time someone comes to visit, I go out to Liberty Island. So I've been there like 4 times now, and we've only lived here for 5 months. It makes me proud to understand how things have started here, how things expanded here and they moved westward, and how we all are standing on the shoulders, if you will, of the people who took a chance or the people who were oppressed, who decided enough is enough. There's a place where I can go at least try out my dream, and I'm going to take the risk to do it. You have taken that kind of strong Irish mindset of I can make it here. What are some of the dreams that you've had that you have made come true by your own power and volition?
Maybe Irish stubbornness might be a different way to put
I
it.
didn't want to say it. You said it.
I've been accused of that a few times. I never had grandiose goals to make a lot of money or to have a certain car. So I really can't answer that in that way. But I always had goals to try and be the best at what I was doing at that time. I'll give you some examples. I wanted to go to college, but I knew my parents didn't have any money for me. So I always had to work. Now, did I think college is going to lead me to Wall Street. No. I worked on Wall Street. I ran an elevator on the 128 Maiden Lane for 2 years, the freight elevator. So I got to see all the Wall Street people up close and personal. I didn't want to be that, but I needed a job to save the money to go to college. A friend of mine, George, he was Greek, and his uncle owned a grocery store in Yonkers. And so in the summertime, we'd go up like 4 o'clock in the morning with him to Hunts Point Market, and he would fill it with vegetables and fruits back in an old station wagon. We'd get it at his wholesale prices, which was technically illegal. And then we would drive back to the Bronx right by Yankee Stadium, and there were no supermarkets right there. And so we'd park the station wagon right off the Grand Concourse on 167th Street, and we would sell the fruits and vegetables and double our price, and we'd buy those little 7-ounce beers, like the little Millers, and would give them to the little old men, and they would always tell us when the cops were coming, because then we'd just pack everything back up and drive a couple of blocks and come back. But we knew each day we can make $100 to $125 a piece, no taxes, and that's 1973. That was a lot of money. It was to work, to hustle, to get that money, something else. And something else for me was college. I always loved playing ball, all ball games. And I knew I wasn't good enough to be a professional, because I played with guys that were good enough. And I said, okay, at some point, your dream has to become different. You have to pivot and not be stupid or not be stubborn. I said, well, if I can't play, next best thing is coaching, because I can do that after those guys retire. When I became a teacher and I started listening to myself, the things that I was telling students, the things that I was telling athletes, they were the same things that my mentors told me. I said, oh my God, I sound like Harry Hart. I sound like Father Principe. The things that were coming out of my mouth, and I told them that, as an adult, to honor them, because I was an extension of these guys that had mentored me. And so, I never had those big goals of like being an astronaut, but being a teacher, being a coach, that was fine for me. Didn't have to go to UCLA or something like that. I was very happy what I was doing, and I'm still that way.
That's beautiful. Man, there's so much to unpack there. I knew that you were a teacher. I think you were a principal of a kind of a rough and tumble school as well.
I've done everything in education. I've cleaned the toilets. I've driven the school bus. I was the cheerleading sponsor one year. And head coaches. I've been the athletic director. I've been the administrator. The only thing I haven't done is being a superintendent. Thank God.
It's like a VP level job that I don't think anyone really wants.
No. But really, my favorite job in all of education is coaching. If you're a good coach, you're really a teacher, and you're a mentor.
Yep.
And your classroom just happens to be the athletic arena. If you're just doing it to win games, you shouldn't coach.
Yep.
That's all the good coaches. I don't care what sport they're in. They were mentors, they were teachers, and the lessons that they taught extended beyond the athletic arena into the arena of life. And that was the arena that I chose to be in, and still choose to be in.
That's cool. So where are you coaching right now? Or where are you
I'm not.
assisting? Okay.
Last year was the first year in 47 years I didn't coach.
And is mostly basketball, or remind me of what?
The last few years, it was all basketball. And that was more because physically, I couldn't. I mean, I may look like a physical specimen, but
We only see you from the top up. So
with 2 hip replacements, a spine membrane that tore, having survived prostate. I can't do the things at 70 that I even did at 60. So I took last year off mainly for my health, and it's gotten better, but I'm still not where I want to be.
Yeah. Well, basketball, it makes sense. I mean, you can always be the post guy. You hold that ball away from everybody. You can use the extra grown man strength that you have to keep all the kids off.
Now I'm the guy on the end of the bench.
Water boy.
It's keep the stats.
Add it to your long list of duties that you've held within education. I totally relate to what you're saying. Athletic teams are a microcosm of what you're trying to teach them out to do out in life. I actually have a interview coming up as a soccer coach for one of the Major League Soccer teams here in New York, because of my experience coaching refugee and immigrant soccer in Kansas City for many years. That's exactly what we were trying to do with those boys. We were trying to help them understand that nothing's given to you. You have to represent yourself well. You have to be able to handle your emotions. You have to be able to ride the ups and downs. And the great leaders help others become better. They don't just focus on themselves. I'd like to hear your take on this. I think I heard this in Michael Jordan's Last Dance documentary. Interviewers are always saying, oh, who's the GOAT? Who's the greatest of all time? It's got to be Michael Jordan. Oh, it's LeBron James. Oh, it's Kobe Bryant. Oh. Michael Jordan said, there's no GOAT in basketball because it's a team sport. You can maybe talk about a guy in his position. Did he play his position better than everyone else? But ultimately, that guy is only as good as the people surrounding him, because one guy trying to take on five guys, I don't care how good or bad they are, you're not going to win.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I would say the greatest winner in basketball that I ever saw in my life in person was Bill Russell. And I saw him in the last 3 or 4 years of his career in person. And he wasn't the greatest basketball player. Wilt Chamberlain was much better total player than he was, but Chamberlain only won one championship. Russell won 11. Think about that, 11 championships. That's tremendous. So what is a GOAT? You know, in basketball, there isn't a GOAT, but I think you say the great winners. You know, Bill Russell would be, I think, the greatest of those winners. Then Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird,
Magic Johnson.
Magic Johnson. You can throw all those guys in. You can throw in John Havlicek. He won 8 championships. There are certain people that they may have played the game differently, but they all played it the same way, and that they made their teammates better. And so if you take that concept and you put it into leadership, whether it's in education, business, or even in the spiritual world, you know, you're a GOAT or one of the great ones if you can make other people better. And it's not telling them necessarily what they have to do to be better. It's helping them understand their own qualities and helping them find the courage to not be afraid to fail, to step out and to inspire them. And so I think all those great athletes did that for the guys that played with them. And if we would look at, say, the great spiritual leaders, the great business leaders, even the great political leaders that we find it hard today to find a lot of them, that's what they did. They inspired others. Take JFK. Some people think he was a great president. Some people say he wasn't. But if you just listen to his presidential address when he was being inaugurated, I don't care what part political aisle you're on, say that was a magnificent speech to inspire a country. I think that is what great leaders do in all fields. They inspire others and they help them find how to magnify their own characteristics. And you can only do that by failure. You got to go out and do it. When I talk to some younger people that say in their 20s that I had coached or taught, and they're trying to get a job and get out of college, or they get a job and they don't like it, I say, God, run a banana for 2 months. Give it 6 months. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. What's the worst that could happen? You get fired. So what? You're 23 years old. Don't be afraid to step outside the line sometime. And I think that's what important, influential leaders do for others.
Yeah. And not just influential, but impactful. I saw a statistic that it takes at least, at minimum, 66 days to form a habit. So to your point, if you're quitting at 2 months, you haven't even gave it a good college try yet, where you can actually build a habit physiologically. You haven't gone through the motions enough to know whether or not it's for you or it's not for you. Being in your 70s now, when you think of young adults in particular, people in their 20s who are trying to get into the forge and, you know, make a way through the world, what might you say to them who think, if I don't do it now, if I don't get my shot, then I won't amount to anything, or I won't be successful, or I'm never going to attain what I set out to attain?
Well, I'll use my 2 sons as an example. I have one son who's a fireman. His job is pretty well defined. It's pretty structured. And so there's really no thing as like 5 and 10-year strategic planning. We have to constantly train. So if we go into a dangerous situation, we're able to come out of that dangerous situation. But my other son, he's an entrepreneur and he's always doing things. I remember telling him when he was probably about 25, I said, think of what you're doing now and think about 5 years from now. You're going to be doing something totally different. And then when you're 30, I'm going to tell you, think of what you're doing now. When you're 35, you're going to be doing something totally different. I was 39 now. We had this conversation last week because we did a family camp trip So we're sitting around the campfire having a few adult malt beverages. And I said to him, I said, "You're 39. Next year, you're 40." And he said, "Oh." I said, "We're having that 5-year conversation." He just broke out laughing. He said, "Dad, I told that to one of the young guys in my firm." you know, but it's so true. You think you have to do it now. No, what you're doing now is great. And you're gaining experience and you're growing your experiences. But most likely, what you're going to do now, you're going to be doing something totally different 5 years from now and totally different 10 years now. But each one of those things is a step towards whatever the ultimate goal is. And some people never get to quote an ultimate goal because they're constantly striving for things. Other people say, "No, I want to be the CEO of a company." Well, they're doing their thing. So that's going to be different. But to me, it's the 5-year rule. If you think you have to get it done now, it's not going to work out well.
I was telling one of my mentees this the other day. They were very driven. And I said, just live in the moment, do what you can now, build a plan, work the plan. That's all fine and dandy. But just be flexible enough for when an opportunity arises and you want to make a pivot or you're not sure you should make a pivot, that you can pivot down that road for 5 years and you haven't wasted any time. And so one of the things that I've been toying with, because I've had to look for new work here in New York, and I don't know anybody here. Turns out I have a couple students that now I'm mentoring or re-mentoring, and I have a colleague who lives here. But like in New York, you really have to make an extra effort to be with people. It's hard to just like put out cold applications and cold call employers and say, these are my skills and this is why you should hire me and this is why I'd be great for your organization. And then the other day, I was playing soccer with these guys that I had met through church, and we went out for beers, and he was like, "Oh, how's this job search going?" I was like, "Man, it's a struggle because I don't know anybody, and it's still about who you know, no matter how much you know." And he said, "I know some people," and he got me one of my first interviews. So I say all that to say, I did this one path for 13 years and now I'm moving to New York away from the Midwest for the first time in my life. It looks completely different and I feel like I'm having to start over. In some ways, I feel like my schooling is actually working against me because
Hmm.
I have a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and a Master of Divinity. It's very niche. They're both very niche. And I have very niche experience with running nonprofits and mentoring people because that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, helping everybody else achieve their dreams. I'm someone who's operating in this landscape of, but what if I transition or what if I pivot? Is it too late? And as a 36-year-old, I can tell you it's hard, but it's not too late.
Yeah, I would agree. It's not too late, but it is hard. Yeah, and you have a bachelor's degree in sociology, and you have a master's in divinity, which a lot of people are scared of that, and they're going to have preconceived ideas of that. But really, with the change in economy, you always hear about AI. I mean, people that have business degrees and MBAs, they can't find jobs because their skill set isn't needed anymore. So it's kind of like maneuvering and navigating in this new economy. But, with the sociology, with the divinity, you still have tremendous marketable skills. You're not networked yet. That's probably the biggest obstacle for you to overcome is being networked in New York in the next 20 years. As we become more machine learned driven, we're going to still have that need for the personal touch. If I was younger, and because I don't have the energy to do it anymore, I would go back and bartend because people that come in, they've been dealing with machines all day and, they've been dealing with technology and they're coming to the bar at happy hour to talk, not to watch TV. They're coming to talk. You get a good bartender, and you're talking to all the people, you can make good money, but more than that, you're going to, bring good cheer to all the people there. And when they leave after an hour, hopefully they're not going to stay there for 5 hours, that they're going to feel better about themselves because those people skills are still so desperately needed. I'm not telling you to go bartend, but I'm saying there are things like that are out there that AI and machines really can't do.
Yeah, 100%. I went to a local pub with my Catholic neighbor who lives above us, and I was paying attention to how hard the bartenders were working. Even without being able to talk to them, you still feel like They were helping you belong in the
Well,
space.
yeah,
Yes, it
that's
is
what it is.
it is a real
Well,
skill.
yeah, yeah. So you need to. Have you been down to McSorley's yet?
No, how did you say it?
McSorley's
McSorley's. Where's
on
that?
Seventh Street.
McSorley's on 7th. Okay.
It's it's the bar that even Abraham Lincoln used to drink in. That's the truth. I spent too many useless Friday afternoons in McSorley's because I was going to college at City College and would take the train down. And at that time in New York, the drinking age was 18. So we thought we were pretty cool. It's like you walk into a place from 1865.
Mm.
So it hasn't changed. But when you go in there, you got to talk to the old bartenders because they never have any young bartenders. They're all old bartenders. And you got to ask them about the chandelier. You're going to see like chicken bones up on the chandelier. And that's all I'm going to tell you. He'll tell you the story and you will start crying. But it's a good story. It's a good story. And there's another place you got to go to, Rolf's on 23rd Street. It's a German bar. When you walk in there, every day of the year, it's a Christmas bar. It has all these phenomenal German Christmas ornaments all over the place. And all of the food they serve there is German. And the beers they have are German beers. And I never go at lunchtime because it's too crowded. I never go at dinner time because it's too crowded. Like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon is perfect.
My goodness, I'm so excited for Rolf's. I love Christmas, German through and through. And I'm going to take my parents, actually. We went to Munich with our 2.5-month-old, and
Oof.
we went for Oktoberfest this last year. And we had him dressed in lederhosen, and we were dancing on the tables to the Pa bands and chugging beers. And man, it was such a good time.
Now, there's another really good German beer garden on the west side at 17th Street. You know the High Line?
Mhm.
Okay, so the Chelsea Market's there. There's like a little side alley. It's called Washington Place. Most people don't even know it exists. And there's a little German beer garden underneath the High Line right before you get to the Hudson River. And it's wonderful. Best German pretzels in the city.
Okay. I'm excited. Biergarten. Wonderful. These are great suggestions. Thank you, Sean. I'm excited. So until I land my job in New York, I'm still a stay-at-home dad. And, that means that I get out and walk New York for 3 hours every day. And the babe and I go to different parks and we go all over. And so my job has been explore New York and then report back to my wife at the end of the day. I feel a little bad because she doesn't get to enjoy any of it with us, but she gets to live vicariously through
There you go.
me and the boy.
Take a
And
picture every
so,
morning.
yeah, so I'm not ashamed to take that boy in with some lederhosen or just a diaper and throw back a brewski at 3 p.m. So that's fun.
You go.
That's awesome. This is so great. My people who come and visit us are going to be so excited. Me too. All right. So I want to pivot here. Tell me a recent moment in your life that feels like a win and one moment that does not feel like a win.
Well, I can tell you a moment that feels like a win is that almost every Tuesday, unless something comes up that's out of my control, I'm a spiritual mentor at the state prison in Lansing. This is something I didn't seek, and I was kind of afraid to do this. I just never really been in prison, So I started doing this prison ministry, and it took a while to earn their trust, but it's really rewarding for me. I asked, for lack of a better term, the inmates a few months ago, guys, sometimes I leave and I wonder, I feel great, but is it good for you? Do we need to do something different for you? And they said, just you coming here every Tuesday, that in itself sometimes is all we need, because then we know that the world hasn't forgot about us. Here, I was thinking I was going to give them some wisdom, but really just going there and physically being there, making the commitment to them that they felt that they weren't crap, that some people still saw them as human beings. I can tell you, these guys have really worked hard at transforming their life. And some guys dropped out, but I think some of these guys, when they get out, they're going to make it. And I think they have a good fighting chance. And there's a few guys I work with that they're in for life. They're making the best of a horrible situation. And they are more Christ-like in a lot of ways than when I leave and have to get back on the highway and get hit with road rage within 5 minutes. So that to me is a real win.
That's beautiful. So you're really talking about power of presence
Yeah.
and how it changes people. That's beautiful. I love
Yeah.
that.
And again, not to get too spiritual, because I know that's not the emphasis of the show, but I think for me, it's part of it. When I go there and I'm talking, yeah, it's me that's talking, but I honestly believe it's the Holy Spirit. Because some of the stuff that comes out of my mouth, I say, that can't be me. It's too good. So it's extremely rewarding for me. I don't get paid for it, but it's a win. It's a big win. Then you said something that's not a win. One of the other, I guess, charities I work with is a young man by the name of Tito who lives in Kansas City, and he's from Uganda. He was a boy soldier back in the day of Idi Amin, and he escaped when he was like 11 years old. And somehow, how in the world did he wind up in Kansas City through all these different refugee camps and everything like that? But he did, and went to school, went to college, graduated from KU. Hadn't seen his mother in 20 years. And then he told me, he said, I got a letter that my mother is alive. He thought his mother had been killed. He got a letter that his mother was alive. So he went, saw his mom. He came back and he goes, Papa Riley, I got to go back. I said, whoa, 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 calm down. What do you mean you got to go back? He goes, no, not to live. He goes, I was in all these villages. None of them have clean water. My mother lives in a mud hut. And that hut's probably the same way people have been living for 3, 4, 500 years. And people have to walk 2 and 3 miles every day just to get clean water. He goes, I know we can put a water well in. So I said, yeah, we can. And I said, I'll find out how much it cost. And I actually talked to one of the people who was at Church of the Resurrection, because they were putting water wells in Malawi. And they said, well, it's a different type of ground. And so I got some engineers, and they told exactly what it would be. And how much money we needed. We got the first one in, but the second one, I had guaranteed them that would have $10,000, and the donors guaranteed me. And literally, like a day before the project was to begin, the donor told me, "I'm sorry, we don't have the money." And this was a donor who has given money to many different projects. They ran out of funds, and I didn't have a backup plan because I just felt this person always came through. So I had to tell them we didn't have the money. And that really, really hurt. They already told the people in Africa that the well was coming. And so that was a real loss. I felt like crap, basically.
Yeah. So what do you do with a loss like that? You just let it live in the ether and let it be what it is, or what do you do with it?
Well, no, I never leave anything just be. I said, okay, when's the next cycle? So the next cycle they can put one in is December of 26. So now we're getting the money through various forms to give to them. If we just sat on our ass and did nothing, you're a loser. Yeah, we lost that moment. And we can say it wasn't our fault. Doesn't matter. It didn't happen. But then if we just sit back on our butts and do nothing, we're a loser. No, we said, okay, now we're going to get it. Boom. We're going to put one in. We'll be ready to roll December 1st, 2026.
It's the Coach Riley coming out.
I don't know. The coach just said, I'm not a loser.
Don't be sitting on your ass. Yeah, get up and do something about it. I love that. It's an actionable taking away. One of my favorite movies is the Rocky films. He's talking to his son and he says, I didn't raise you this way to get knocked on your ass and just stay there. Life's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. I feel like that's very much what you're preaching here. And how lucky that young man is to have somebody who believes in him and wants to support him and has enough trust in you to see this through to completion. I think that's beautiful. I want to talk a little bit more about your mentorship with young adults and your years of pouring into young people. Where does that come from? Is it something that someone passed down to you? Is it something that you just happened upon? And then my second part of that question is mentoring young people can get really tiring, especially when you do it for years. I've been doing it for a decade and a half. You can start to feel a little burnt out. How do you sustain decades of mentoring young people?
I never thought of it that way. How do I sustain? But let me come back to that. Something may pop into my head, but for me, it happened organically. I mentioned earlier that I always played ball. On Christmas Day, after Christmas, we're out playing tackle football in the snow. We were the kids that took the shovels, went to the playground and shoveled so we could play basketball in the snow. It didn't matter. We were playing ball no matter what. And that was what we did. Your reputation came from that. Not that you had to win all the time, but that you were there and you were a competitor. That was just part of who you were. Then we got a little bit older. We started playing other neighborhoods for money. And then you had to win because we didn't have much money to lose. And somebody had to be kind of like the leader. And I never asked for it. It was just kind of assigned to me. So I became like the player coach. And it didn't matter what game we were playing. And it wasn't, okay, now we're playing baseball, I'm the pitcher. No, I was a catcher. In football, I wasn't a quarterback. I was a running back, and I was a linebacker. I didn't have the star position. Putting people in the positions to make themselves most successful so we could win came natural to me. And knowing that I wanted to coach, and then to coach in high school especially, you're going to teach. And some of my greatest mentors that I had were classroom teachers. And I just fell into that role. So yes, it was passed down to me, but it wasn't like passed down to me like your dad was a blacksmith, so you're a blacksmith. It was passed down to me through osmosis, but I also a lot of times think it was the guiding hand of God too. To say, this is what you're meant to do. Now I know a lot of people don't believe in that, but I could never see myself sitting in an office for the last 50 years on some computer. I just couldn't do that. I couldn't be a salesman, though there's nothing wrong with salesmen. And friends of mine that became insurance salesmen, heck, some of them became millionaires. And they would say, Sean, you ought to sell insurance. You'd be great at it. I said, I don't want to sell insurance. I was bartending. I was coaching. I loved that. I loved teaching. I loved the whole experience. I loved helping young people develop because the people that helped me were all teachers and coaches. I was an extension of them. Doing that for 50 years never to me was a chore. Remember that saying, find something you love and you never work a day in your life? Really, that was me. I can never remember really going into school and saying, I hate going in today. Now, there were some days where I said, I should have went home before 4 o'clock in the morning because I have to teach at 8 o'clock. But I wasn't going to call in sick. I was going to be there for those kids. It doesn't make me a martyr or anything. It was just, again, that accountability factor. I signed on the line that I was going to be there for them. So I was going to be there for them. And I never felt burnt out on it. Yeah, I had times when it hurt. Kids I worked with that got hit by trains, committed suicide, died other ways, overdoses. Yeah, all those things happen. But then the kids that, came from really tough families that became doctors and lawyers and teachers and firemen and cops and kids that named their kids after me, there couldn't be any greater honor.
Well, man, there's so much good there. Okay, my first question is it came to you organically. It felt built into your personality. You're talking about I'm playing ball, and every time I'm playing ball, it's like I'm naturally becoming the coach of our team. I'm inspiring, I'm mentoring, I'm saying, guys, this is what we got to do. Here's the strategic plan. How we're going to attack it. I'm managing up, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I love that. I love that it's built in. But there is a sense that even for people who recognize their gifts, you can squander your gift, you can belittle your gift, you cannot use your gift, you cannot take the time to practice your gift. You could be not given opportunities or seizing the moment to really accentuate your gift and multiply your gift, but you did. I guess my first question would be for someone who has a big dream and knows their gifts and has used them, how do you stay content to not go, ooh, shiny insurance salesman has a shiny car because they make a lot of money. I'm going to stay in my lane, not because I don't think I'm capable of more, but because this is what I feel called to, and this is what I love, and this is going to keep giving me out of bed in the morning, and this is what is going to help make the world a better place. How do you stay content with that mindset that you obviously had and have?
Think any person is susceptible to what we might call burnout. Even if you stay in the lane, you say, hey, this is what I want to do. This is my passion. Sometimes you got to do other things. And that's why even like professional athletes, they have the off season to recharge. Teachers each 9 months, and then they have time to recharge. Coaches have to do that too. I think it's terrible when we take athletes, especially high school athletes, and we work them year round. That's what they're being told today to do. And I think it's crazy. Take time off, go swimming. But there's somebody else out there. Yeah, don't worry about it. People are going to work themselves to death. It doesn't mean they're going to be better. So I think you have to have distractions, healthy distractions. Believe me, there's a lot of unhealthy distractions, and they're okay every now and then. But then you have to have other distractions. Like I don't go to casinos, but I love going to the horse track. We don't have one in Kansas City. But if we did, I wouldn't go all the time, but I would go occasionally. To me, that's a great distraction. I also love to read. I love to cook. If I was standing up and people could see my rotundness, they would know I like to eat. But before you eat, you got to cook. And I'd love to sing. We go to sing-alongs. So there's a lot of things that you can do that have nothing to do with your career, nothing to do with your path, your passion, but they do have a lot to do with your mental health and keeping you energized, where you don't have to go to the top of some mountain in Nepal to find the guru. You can do that yourself. And I think they all have to revolve around other people. I think, find the joy in other people. To me, there's nothing like a good sing along. And you get people singing songs together and all their problems go away for that time. And it's energizing.
Where are you doing these sing-alongs at? I don't know about this.
Well, we do them sometimes in people's houses, sometimes in bars. Hey, you could go down Francis Tavern in Lower Manhattan. It's where George Washington used to eat lunch. It's a little museum bar down there. But on Friday and Saturday nights, I think at 7 o'clock, they have sing-alongs there I used to go to. They still have them. Maria's Crisis Center on Hester Street in the Village. They have sing-alongs every night. So there's places you can go, but sometimes we just do it at people's houses here. It's fun. Person might start playing the piano and all of a sudden we're singing stupid songs and laughing and having a grand old time. It's not serious at all.
Yeah.
But those things energize you and they give you a healthy break from that drive that you have to be successful. I was in the pool this morning at 7:30. I'll be in the pool tomorrow morning at 7:30. I have a lot of problems with my hips and my back where I can't walk very long, but I can get in the water, so that I get my physical exercise in that way. You got to do those things. If you're just going to say, I'm selling stocks, I'm selling bonds, I got to put these hours in or Goldman Sachs is going to fire me. Well, they're not going to fire you. You'll probably drop dead from exhaustion of putting in 20 hours a day. You got to find a balance. And I think that's what's always, kept me, I think, charged.
Charged, yeah. That's interesting. Of all the episodes we've had, nobody has talked about that kind of balance and grounding yet. Um, that's a really good word. And I think what's so valuable about having an educator, having a coach, having someone who has more years than anybody else we've had on the podcast just give some wise perspective on the fluctuation of time and the relativity of it all. I'd love to hear you muse on this a little bit. How do you think about the time that you have left on earth as opposed to how you thought about it maybe in your 20s or early 30s?
I have an older brother. He's like 4 years older than me. And when he turned 70, he called me up and said, how did this happen? And it's kind of like I feel that way too, because I'm 70 years young and my body has failed me. And that happens with age. I get pissed off because I still want to do. Like last year, we hiked in the Swiss Alps and I was able to do that. And we swam in the Mediterranean off the island of Crete. I was able to do that. I thought that was great. And this year in summer, we're going to go to Calgary and Banff and what we call Glacier National Park and go hiking. I'm hoping I can do that. Right now, I could not do that. And so I'm working to get there. You have to understand your age, but at the same time, don't become prisoner to it and say, because of this, I can't do this, I can't do that. Yeah, but there's still a lot of things you can do. And maybe some of those things you can do will be new experiences, and now it's not as dramatic. You hear some people that, go blind or something like that. And they all of a sudden they realize all their other senses, but it's, I can't do a lot of the things I used to do, but I can do other things. So you're kind of reinventing yourself and there's fun in that.
Yeah, I love that you're taking a delight in it. I was telling this to my dad a few months ago. My dad was diagnosed with an incurable blood cancer this last year. And I told him, Dad, you have to redesign your life. You have to rededicate yourself every day to reinventing yourself. You have to wake up with a new mindset each day that's going to help you overcome the doom and gloom of my time is now a time bomb. It's not promised. But what's so funny is none of us are promised any of it, And I just think when we're young, we live as if we have all the time in the world. And then when we get older, we live as if there's no tomorrow. And really, I feel like it should just be live like there's no tomorrow at all times in your life. Now, of course, like you want to set yourself up for longevity and not just blow all your money at a casino one day. But it's good perspective to hear from you as a 70-year-old, just going, you know what I got, and I have things that I love, and I want to do these things, and I've got dreams, but I can't change my circumstance per se, but I can work toward an alteration of the dream that I want to live out right here and right now. And you're doing something about it. I think that's the coolest thing. You're not just sitting on your ass going, well, poor me, my spine's ripped apart and my hips are all messed up. And we had this conversation about like where they took the bone marrow out, and that was the worst description of pain I've ever heard in my entire life. And, like you do it again because you're doing something about your situation rather than just being a victim of your circumstance.
In 2016, I had prostate cancer, and the surgeons say we can have surgery, which surgeons always say. And they say, if you don't get surgery, we can also zap the hell out of you, and it may or may not work, and you'll probably have to have surgery anyway. I said, but if I don't have to have surgery, go ahead and zap the hell out of me rather than me paying you money to go cut me up. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. But that was 2016. Look at me today. I'm around and happy. But also during that experience, I never felt sorry for myself. I figured, hell, I've lived a great life. I said, if I die, I die. But I don't think God wants me to die yet. And I really believe that. So when I prayed, I said, yeah, God, I want to live. But really, I'm praying more for the doctors, that they stay focused, that they don't get bored, because I need them at the top of their game. And pull through, and a few weeks later, I started feeling like myself. And I was still coaching and teaching at the time. I realized one day, I'm playing with house money. If this happened a generation ago, I would have died. So anything else that happens to me, whether it's hips, spine, heart, I'm playing with house money. And when you have that kind of attitude, nothing's really bad. Yeah, these things happen, but I can't sit at home and be a miserable SOB. There's too much life to live.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. You've mentioned your faith a lot, which I love. I have a deep faith. Obviously frames the way you think about hope and pursuing what you can right in front of you and serving others. What are some other ways that faith influences the way you move through the world and the way that you've thought about mentoring others, coaching, teaching?
One of my greatest mentors in high school was this priest, Father Principe. Brilliant man. If you go on Netflix, there's a documentary on there about Martin Scorsese, and he was Martin Scorsese's mentor also. When he was a young priest, he had Martin Scorsese. When he was an older priest, he had me. you know,
He leveled up. He leveled up.
But he taught you how to think, not what to think. And I can remember he taught me in senior in high school a class in physical anthropology. I just think there's a natural law in there, but I think if you're open to the Spirit will always be there with you. And when times get tough, the Spirit will come and walk with us and give us the strength and give us the insight. And if we see somebody else who needs help and we walk with them, the Spirit is walking with us. And a lot of times we bring the Spirit to that person. And I also believe that every time you help a person, no matter if you know the person or not, and usually it's when you don't know the person, you're probably the answer to a prayer. I can remember telling my students that, and it wasn't a novel thought of mine. It was something that was told me. And they would say, I never thought about that. I said, yeah, that's why when you help somebody you don't know, you're an answer to their prayer. I think those things exist. I know they exist. Can I explain them? No. And really, do I want to explain them? No. I find a certain amount of goodness in just believing. And people say, well, that's kind of naive. You're a grown man. You shouldn't think like that. Well, somewhere in that good book, it says that we're supposed to believe like little children. And, I find it very peaceful for myself when I believe that way. So as a Catholic, something like the virgin birth, okay, it makes no sense. But you know what? It's beautiful to me. And so I'm not even going to try to explain it. The resurrection, it doesn't make any sense. But my life is banking on that. Belief to me is wonderful. And I'm sure people that are of other faiths have their beliefs that are equally as wonderful. And I think that, again, my growing up on a street that I affectionately called a living, breathing UN, has always given me an ecumenical outlook. And yes, as a Christian, that's very important to me. My Muslim friends, they're more devout in their religion than I am in mine. And I believe my Jewish friends, even my agnostic friends, we all coexist very well. There are many rooms in my Father's house. That's a guiding light for me. When I think heaven is for everybody, it's going to be an exciting place.
100%. And that's one of the things I love about New York. If heaven is a single consciousness or it's a real experience of afterlife, it's going to be so many people who don't look like you or think like you or act like you. And we're all going to be in the same place. And so, like, what we talk about in Methodism is we need to practice heaven in the here and now. So that's why we serve. That's why we love. That's why we forgive. That's why we show grace and mercy and compassion, because we're practicing what is to come, what is yet to be. And every time we do it, it breaks into the here and now. And one of my favorite ways to describe it in a metaphorical way is every time you enact justice or mercy or fill in the blank, you get heaven leaning over the rails.
Never heard of it that way.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm hearing Father Principe when you're speaking. You're saying things to the kids that you mentored, which are things that mentors said to you growing up. I feel like I'm now hearing Father Principe through you as well.
That's a good
And
thing.
yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a wonderful thing. I'm sure Martin Scorsese would agree. And I want to kind of wrap up with this last question that I actually haven't asked anyone yet. So this is new. Mentor me for a second. What are some things that I should be exploring with the young adults? I want to mentor young adult New Yorkers who are becoming grounded, capable, and confident young professionals in New York City. What are some things that I should be open to? What are some mentoring practices, some mentoring wisdom? What are some things I should not be afraid to do? What are some suggestions that you just might have about how to set up a servant oriented practice in New York City?
Wow, that's a lot for one question. Well, if you look at all the recent literature concerning the 20 somethings, there's a lot of the statistics are beginning to see a skew up in people who are looking for not just church attendance, but for a deeper spiritual life. So I think you have an audience that is more receptive now than, say, 10 years ago. Now, understanding that, what I also read is that even though that's true, they're looking for it in more conservative churches than I think you're used to. And so, I think not that that's bad, but I think understanding your audience, like, again, if you're a salesman, you have to understand what that person needs and what they're looking for. So say, okay, why are these young people looking for this more conservative kind of slant of Christianity where for generations the young people have revolted against the hard and fast parts of Christianity? And we say, okay, these are all people that were probably teenagers during the pandemic. Not that we're going to say the pandemic was the root of all evil, but it happened and it was disruptive and it threw everyone's life in chaos. So what does conservative Christianity bring to a lot of people? It brings stability. You say, okay, there's rules and regs. It's very black and white to people who have had a lot of upheaval in their life. And you throw in there probably over 50% of them probably coming from families where the parents are divorced, more upheaval. All right. So the conservative brand of Christianity gives structure. I think that is key, the stability factor. Whereas I think a generation ago, they weren't looking for stability. Matter of fact, they were rebelling against that. And we had to do things that were just really service orientated to kind of grab them in. And with older, like college and above, we had like happy hours for young adults. And, no one got stupidly drunk, but after a couple of drinks, people do speak freer.
That's helpful. Appreciate your authenticity and your candor to share your faith openly and how it's affected you. At the end of talking, my neck was itching. I ran into this pin over here. This is actually a pin I get it when I'm ordained as a pastor. And I wore it today because I had a meeting with a couple of pastors in leadership. in the United Methodist New York Annual Conference. We had lunch today, and I just wanted to represent, to what I've been called and ordained, which is compassion and justice ministry. It's interesting that this episode took a very spiritualized turn.
I wasn't expecting that,
I wasn't
from
either.
the questions you had sent me.
I wasn't either. It's beautiful. It was meant to be. I think God's going to speak to people, and I'm not ashamed to claim my allegiance to the love of Jesus enacted in the world. And so this has been a really beautiful conversation. Sean, thank you so much for your time. And I want to say to any young adults who are out there listening, if you're looking for a mentor like a Sean or like me, you can stop because you found me. So check me out at afterthebellnyc.com. You can get in contact with me there. I would love to be a long-term mentor for you, or just set up a introductory call to see if I'm a good fit for you. And Sean, let's end this the right way, my friend. Cheers to you and to your continued ministry in Kansas City.
All right, brother.
All right.